Hi, welcome to Bible Scribe again. I'm doing this video as a follow-up sort of to my video on the Olivet Discourse, the parallels video. We went through the Olivet Discourse there, and I made reference to a lot of the kind of miraculous events surrounding AD 70 and the war in Jerusalem where the Romans came in and destroyed the temple. Uh, but I wanted to do a follow-up to give you some of the things specifically that both Josephus, the Roman historian, and Tacitus, the Roman historian, recorded about that time. I mentioned how miraculous they were and how incredible some of the things were and breathtaking, but I wanted to show you those things specifically, so I thought I'd make this video to go through a few of those things so you're aware of what exactly is said in those historians' writings. So I've put together this web page from my wiki that I use to record my notes. And I just have a table here of the miraculous events of the first century. I have on the left column the occurrence of the thing that happened, the event, and then I have Josephus's records of what that was, and then Tacitus in the third column, his records of what happened. The reason I did this is because Josephus and Tacitus record many of the same things. Some things one will record and the other won't, but a majority of them are recorded in both. So it's cool to see, just like the Gospels, they kind of cross over each other and interleave. Well, Tacitus and Josephus do the same thing with their records of the first century. So I'm just going to go through these because there's a few of them, and like I said, it's miraculous the things that happened. The first one I have listed here was the temple gate was opened. And so Josephus says about this, the eastern gate of the inner court of the temple, which was of brass and vastly heavy, and had been difficultly shut by 20 men. It took 20 men to shut the thing. It was such a large gate. Of course, I'm sure it was like possibly 20 feet high and made of solid brass. That thing's heavy. And so it's understandable why it might have took 20 men. But it says here that's what it took, and that was with difficulty that 20 men could shut it. But it also rested upon a basis armed with iron. So the hinges of this door of brass were iron and had bolts fastened very deep into the firm floor, which were there made of one entire stone, was seen to be opened. So this is what it's saying about the gate. It was seen to be opened of its own accord about the 6th hour of the night. So that is this event of the temple gate being open that Josephus records. Tacitus also records this. He says just that the doors of the holy place abruptly opened in the night. So there's those two records. Now the next thing was, and I mentioned this in the Olivet Discourse video, there was a star that looked like the shape of a sword in the sky. Josephus says, a star resembling a sword which stood over the city, and a comet continued the whole year during the attack on Jerusalem. So for the whole year there was this comet and a star that was, I can only imagine, there's not much description here, but perhaps the way it, what do they call it? The star effect you see in some photography, or if you squint your eyes looking at a light bulb or a star, it seems to go and do like points. But this star apparently resembled a sword and was reported by people all across the city. And it continued a whole year. It was just there. So then also the comet, I recorded that as a separate event, although they're mentioned in the same place. So it's the same quote by Josephus there. Now this is the other thing, another thing that happened. There was a light on the temple, like the whole temple and altar was lit. Josephus says a bright light was shining around the altar and the temple. Tacitus says that a sudden lightning flash from the clouds lit up the temple. So perhaps maybe this lightning flash occurred and then the temple itself was just lit like daytime during the night. Very strange, very miraculous. The next thing that's recorded is angels and chariots. So Josephus says, before the sun setting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running around the clouds and surrounding of cities. That's crazy. Chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor seen running about among the clouds and surrounding of cities. I thought that Tacitus mentioned this. It looks like in my notes I either thought I was going to put something there and didn't, or I didn't find it. So regardless. The next thing, earthquake. So that's one of the things Jesus mentioned in the Olivet Discourse. But this is not the earthquakes he was talking about. He was talking about the birth pangs. So I guess this is not that earthquake. But Josephus records that the temple priests themselves felt an earthquake. And this was right before the Roman soldiers leveled the place and killed them all. So anyway, there was an earthquake that day. The voices. So Josephus records they heard a sound of a great multitude saying, "Let us remove hence." Tacitus also records this. He says, a superhuman voice was heard to declare that the gods were leaving it, meaning the city. And so obviously people hearing these voices of spirits, of spiritual things happening, and not being able to explain it other than saying we heard that they were saying that they're leaving or something's leaving, whatever. That's amazing. Great noise. Josephus says a great noise. It's just recorded that there was some great noise. And Tacitus says also, in the same instant came the rushing tumult of their departure. So Tacitus records this in the same area where it's talking about these voices, but there was a great rushing noise, like a loud wind or a tornado, and that they both record that. Then another thing that was recorded in Josephus is a crier saying, "Whoa, whoa." So there was this man named Jesus, a different Jesus, because Jesus really, in Greek, Jesus is Joshua, or so it could, there's another man named Jesus, obviously, but Jesus, the son of Ananias, was going through the city. A voice from the east, a voice from the west, a voice from the four winds, a voice against Jerusalem and the holy house, a voice against the bridegrooms and the brides, and a voice against this whole people, by day and by night, in all the lanes of the city. So this guy was running through the city day and night, yelling, "Woe to Jerusalem," because God was bringing vengeance. It's incredible. So, who can only guess that God maybe himself compelled this man to do this? But it's amazing. So those are the main things that are recorded that are just kind of like supernatural. And you can't explain why a Roman historian would have written this down. Obviously, this stuff really happened and was so widely known that he couldn't ignore it. The Romans couldn't ignore that these things happened. That's one thing that I think is amazing, is that these Roman historians had no reason, no agenda to record these things. In fact, it was probably not a very popular thing for the Romans. They didn't want to be, seeing that all this supernatural things happened, and essentially God showed his power in the situation. And their gods, the Apollo and their emperors who claimed to be gods, they didn't have any power over what happened in this situation. And so it's amazing to me that the Roman historians still recorded it. I'm sure they didn't publicize it very much because it doesn't put them in a great light. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. These events that occurred in the first century that are recorded at the end of the Jewish War, these cannot be explained by anything except supernatural. And I also, I forgot about this, but I didn't record it here. I know that there is also a record that at the time of the siege and the war, there was a day when a heifer, which is a female virgin cow, walked into the temple in front of the priests, and laid down and gave birth to a lamb in the middle of the temple. As if God wasn't doing enough already. I know this is recorded in Josephus. I don't have it written here, but a virgin cow came into the temple, laid down, and gave birth to a lamb in the middle of the temple. It doesn't get any more in your face than that, as far as God trying to tell the Jews, I'm going to have to judge you if you don't recognize my lamb, my son Jesus. It's amazing. I hope this has been helpful. I encourage you just to read Josephus. If you want this information, if you want to be a student of these things, read Josephus, read Tacitus. They're both online, and that'll give you the same information. I've just tried to go in and pick things out as I read them and put them in my notes so I can tell people about them, because this is important. Christians don't normally know these things, and we need to. We're Christians. This is our God acting in history, and we need to be aware of what he did. So I hope that helps. Thanks for joining me again. God bless.